Hello, and again, welcome to Bit Depth. I'm Santiago Ramones. Across from me is...
Tyler Johnston.
Hi, Tyler.
Hello.
It's been a little while.
Yeah, it's been 4 or 5 years. How long has it been?
Much. Yeah.
End of 2013.
Yeah.
Because we went to San Antonio.
Yeah, that was... So how do we know each other?
We were in band together. You were my senior leader.
Yeah.
Person.
So what did you play in band?
I played, when I was with you, I played baritone, marching baritone. And then later on I switched to guard after everyone left. Nice.
Well, I didn't get to know guard. Actually, though, I do work with Brittany at Breakout.
Wait, which Brittany? There's a couple.
Fitzgerald.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah.
But yeah. Hi, Britt. I don't know. I don't think she listens to this. But either way. So yeah, I wanted to have you on. One, because you're like one of the people that actually like listens to the podcast and that I know that listens. Mm-hmm. And since you listen, you know that I like keep saying like, who the heck is listening to the podcast? But I'm glad. Why do you choose to listen to this?
I just like, I started listening when you were like, hey, here's episode 1. And I was like, I'll listen to someone talk. I have nothing better to do. And I listened to it and I really liked it. I liked what you were talking about. And so I just kind of kept following from there.
So yeah, you're like my best fan, but I reciprocate it because I care about you. Okay, so what do you do?
I do many a thing. Right now, my forte is writing.
Okay.
I've been writing since I was at least 10 years old, but I've started to take it more seriously now that I'm older and I'm like, hey, this could possibly be a career choice.
Right.
So I'm always working on that.
Mm-hmm. What are the other many things that you do?
Not many, but I'll have little things. I like to compose a little bit on my own time, but I usually have no idea what I'm doing. It's just kind of me messing around with instruments and notes and just seeing what fits. But they all kind of come together, like if I'm writing a certain project, then I'll compose for that project and be like, oh, this could, come together.
Yeah.
I like to make a whole circle of art.
So, like you said, you started writing a long time ago. So first of all, what made you want to start writing?
I'm not quite sure what sparked that when I was so young. I just know that I just started doing it because I was always into creating things when I was younger. I would make movies out every single day with my little camcorder that recorded onto VHS tapes. We have 20 blank VHS tapes at my old house. So I would just make movies and then sometimes I would write. I was a very creative child, to say the least. I had big ambitions for that kind of stuff. I don't know what sparked it, but as I kind of grew older, I realized, hey, this is like a genuine creative outlet, and it became something bigger for me along the way. And then I ended up here where I'm like, hey, it would be really nice to get something published. But that's going to take a while.
Right. So since you talk about writing or doing camcorder stuff, do you want to write for film or what medium are you going for?
I'm mostly just going for novels, but I would love to write for film because, I've wanted to be a director since I was 2, a big movie buff, but I like the idea of writing for a film. I find it slightly, actually, I've discussed this with a couple of my writer friends. I find it a little bit easier almost to write screenplays than to write for novels, which is interesting because most people see it the other way. But I feel like with screenplays, you can kind of go about it in a way that isn't as clean, I suppose. I don't know the word I'm looking for, but I've tried my hand at screenwriting before, and I found it just flows a little bit easier. You just have to format it correctly is the thing. Right. It's all about the way you format it and the way you the system of which you go about it. But I would do both. I'd be happy with either.
Right.
Any sort of writing would be nice. I'd write a musical if I could.
So what was the first thing that you can consider I wrote this thing and it is finished?
When I was I want to say 9, 8, 6, I don't remember how young I was, I got a hold of Microsoft Word, 2007.
Good start.
Everyone used 2007. And I wrote this little book about Santa because it was around Christmas time. And I was like, oh, I'll share this with my family. It was 5 chapters long, and each chapter was 1 paragraph.
Yeah.
So it was not that impressive by any means. But that's the first thing I remember writing and completing and thinking, I wrote something,
right. Did you print it out?
Yes, I did. I printed it out and I gave sheets of it to my family, and I was like, read this and give me feedback. I like to be criticized because I feel like it makes you a stronger, as long as it's constructive criticism.
Right.
Yeah. And of course they were my family, so they were like, oh,
this is great.
Yeah.
It's perfect. Are you still proud of it?
Of that book?
Yeah.
I haven't seen that book in years. That was on the old family computer that we had in 2006.
Right.
So I haven't seen that in years. I have missed a lot of my writing because I haven't transferred it to new computers and stuff. So every time I get a new computer, I have to start fresh. Except for now.
So, who are some of your favorites in writing fiction, I guess?
In writing, there are a few. It's mostly just based off of who I read. I really, of course, everyone loves Stephen King. He, I think he was best when he was on his little drug trips, when he was up in the mountains, piling powder. I love him. There's this great book. I've never known how to pronounce the name. It's called House of Leaves by Mark Z. Danielewski, I believe is how you pronounce his name. And that is a phenomenal book. And that really shaped my way of writing because of his style was incredible. And it was very creepy. Of course, I don't only read horror. I read all sorts of things, but those are just some that have kind of hit me harder with the more horror. Jenny Lawson is really funny. She wrote a couple books, and I followed her for a while. I actually follow her on social media. I'm trying to think who else. I've recently come across, I think his name, I can't remember his name. He wrote The Snowman, which just got turned into a movie last year. And he's from Norway or Sweden or something. So they had to translate it. And so, so I'll read it and it'll be they went to and then all of a sudden it's just this giant word with way too many letters and I can't understand it.
Right.
But his writing style is very nice. I like to read kind of memoirs from celebrities because as long as they're humorous. I've been listening to Anna Faris's audiobook called Unqualified. And it's phenomenal. She's hilarious, but she's also really good at, pulling emotion. And that's kind of what I aim to do is to just pull emotion from people, whether it's happy or sad or scared. Or I just like the idea of getting someone to feel something through the art of word.
Well, speaking of the art of word, what what is the importance of words? Getting a little bit heady here, but what is the importance of words?
I think that is a very vague question.
That's the point.
I think the importance of word, whether it's in a writing medium or just spoken word, mostly focusing on writing medium, I feel like it's one of the only ways that we will always have to convey ideas, to be able to speak freely, and to put out these new stories and new information. You know, even if you're writing freelance for some sort of outlet, you know.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of power with the words we can use. And I like to take a hold of that and do what I can with it, because there's not a lot of mediums that we have left at the moment that are like untouched, that are clean. So I really respect the art of using words, and I think anyone who can write is very talented, because it takes a lot to be able to kind of string those things together. And I think everyone should write. I think everyone should at least try to write. I have always said that if you, no matter what, you should always just give it a shot, you know, because everyone has a story to tell. I always say that everyone has a story to tell. Yeah. Everyone has ideas that they could put forward if they just gave it the effort.
Exactly.
So I think everyone should write.
Yeah. And then regarding fiction, so like, I mean, it is the big dividing line between half of the books, but there's a skill on either side, and so what is, I mean, for someone who, like myself, I've been reading a lot of fiction, but I've also made a point to try to read a lot of nonfiction as well. And so I find that nonfiction is sort of regarded as like more important per se. So what is the importance of fiction?
That's a question. I think the importance of fiction versus nonfiction. I mean, nonfiction obviously is important, and I don't think anybody can deny that. It's genuine, and but I feel like fiction can be genuine as well. I feel like, you know, even if you're just taking someone to a place that they've never been before, or if you're just putting out, you know, subtle ideas throughout a story that's more colorful, either way you're putting out a message. And I think messages are just as important as information and telling a true story, that sometimes telling a false story is just as important, because you'll learn something at the end, or you'll find out something about yourself that you didn't know, or find things that you liked that you didn't know you liked.
Yeah. So then this is sort of, I always use this question for like, because I said like, so who are some of your favorite writers? For, I guess, to preface it, what is your favorite book right now? Or at least just ever?
That's really hard. I have about 20 books laying on my bookshelf in my little entertainment center that I still need to finish. But out of all of them, I would say top 3 would be The House of Leaves. It's fantastic, and it freaked me out so bad to the point that like I had to stop reading it. Because, you know, not to spoil anything, but you get towards the back of the book and it's like you're going insane, because the text is like in like squares, and then it starts quoting like the Bible, and then
that's cool.
It starts spiraling, and you have to read it in a mirror, and you have to like turn it upside down and rip pages to figure out how to read it. That was a very, very creative book that I looked after for a long time. And I've told everyone about it.
Yeah.
Anytime we're talking about books, I'm like, please read this book. Number 2 would probably be something by Jenny Lawson, probably Furiously Happy. It's her kind of memoirs about how she dealt with mental illness through her adulthood, but also just the funny things that happened to her along the way. So that's why it's called Furiously Happy, is because she talks about she's on a journey to be so happy that it's like insane. She wants that to be her mood all the time. And she's hilarious. She is one of the only writers that can make me like actually laugh out loud. And then number 3 would probably be something simple. Like Harry Potter.
Right.
You know.
Thank you for reading my mind. I wasn't gonna say it.
something along those lines.
Right.
You know? I mean, obviously Harry Potter is like
Right. It's great.
Yeah, oh yeah.
But it's young adult fiction.
Yeah. I feel like there are some books that are, you know, more suited to my taste than young adult fiction. But I do like, of course, that kind of stuff. You know, that's a special guilty pleasure in my heart.
No, it shouldn't even be a guilty pleasure. Like, it is
a pleasure.
It is. It's a Harry Potter. Everybody needs to read it. So then, yeah, that was my preface question, because the real question is, what is the best book?
I'm not sure I'm qualified to answer that question.
Right, but just opinions.
Opinion. Oh, that's really difficult. Because I mean, I feel like there are books that are best for different reasons. You know, the best book that was nonfiction that I ever read was something I read in 2nd grade. It was this giant book about sharks that my teacher lent me, and you know, I read the whole thing.
Right.
It was about like this thick, you know, like it was a doorstop, and I read the entire thing.
Right.
And so I loved that, and that's what I think of when I think of nonfiction. It's like, I'm like, shark book.
Right.
But, you know, and then there have been the scariest books that I've ever read, and the funniest books. I think it's really, really hard to generalize all of them and say this is the best book I have ever read.
Right.
So, like I said, I'm not sure I'm qualified to answer that question. If I had to give an answer, I'm really not sure what I could say.
Right.
I feel like I said, I feel like that's just something that you need to ask a professional. I am not a professional in the least, so I'm not as versed. So I don't think that that's something that I can attest to. You know, I can tell you my favorite book, you know, which would probably be House of Leaves or Furiously Happy, but to say what the best book is in like the entire world, I mean, it's probably like The Godfather or something of like significance.
Sure. And then, since we're more leaning fiction anyways, there's a really big importance on symbolism, metaphor, in that, you know, a lot of times, well, really, you can't get symbolism through nonfiction because you would be lying or stretching, you know.
Yeah.
So what is the importance of metaphor?
I think that kind of answers itself. I feel like the importance of metaphor is that you can put out something that has 2 completely different meanings, possibly more. You know, you know, people will read into things. They'll read something and then they'll read into it. So you can find more messages than you realize. Yeah. Even in something as simple as Harry Potter, you know.
Yeah. No, there's definitely
yeah. Like so many things that could represent, you know, I mean, you come down to basic, the battle of good versus evil, but then you get into stuff that's like
Harry's Jesus.
Yeah, stuff like that. So, you know, I feel like the importance of metaphor is just that it's being able to spread a message possibly in a more subtle way, so that it kind of goes under the nose at first, and then once you realize what you've read, you're like, oh. And a really good example of that, this is actually film, not reading, but I recently watched Mother. Which
I've been meaning to watch that.
Oh my god, that's so good. I'd have to spoil it to tell you everything, but the whole story is one big metaphor.
Mm-hmm.
And they did it impeccably, in my opinion. I thought they did a great job.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to...
Right.
I won't spoil anything, but it's a huge allegory.
Okay.
And then I was like... And then it hit me, and I was like, whoa, oh my God, that makes so much sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like stuff like that, coming out with two different intentions. One, to entertain, and second, to inform and to spread a message of hopefully positivity.
Yeah.
And not something bad.
Yeah. And then obviously writing is not exclusive to book form.
No, not at all.
And so we do get the film medium. And so then what has been sort of a more impactful thing that you've seen lately and then ever?
Okay, that's a little bit easier to answer. I have a favorite screenwriter, Kevin Williamson. He wrote my favorite scary movie of all time, which was Scream, because I saw it when I was super young, and then I just kept watching it, and that's my favorite. It's in my top 3 favorite movies of all time. I feel like he's just a genius with the ideas he comes up with. And I know that a lot of this is leaning towards like the horror kind of creepy aspect, but that's where I find a lot of inspiration actually, because I feel like it takes a lot of skill to be able to set up such an elaborate storyline where you can have someone on the edge of their seat and being able to jolt them with just the use of words, you know?
Yeah.
I feel like that takes something. And I've had it happen to me. Yeah. You read something and all of a sudden you just like drop the book and you're like, oh, that didn't happen. But he's definitely my favorite screenwriter, scriptwriter. And as far as movies that I feel have inspired my writing, I really enjoyed... a lot of people hate on it, but I really enjoyed Avatar for the writing, not the story, because the story was... pretty much Pocahontas with blue people.
Right.
But
Pocahontas, Dances with Wolves.
Yeah, exactly.
The Last Samurai.
Exactly. I just really enjoyed the way they went about writing that particular story. And of course, part of it was the visual medium. The effects were, for that time, it was like incredible. And then there are more simple things. Titanic is one of my favorite movies. Actually, that's my favorite movie of all time is Titanic, because I'm a sucker for that one.
Yeah. 2 for 3 with James Cameron.
Yeah. James Cameron, I mean, he's up there. That's one of my favorites, and I feel like the writing for that one was a little bit... I can also respect pulling that kind of emotion from people, because Titanic is one of those where, most people are like a mess at the end of it.
Oh, yeah.
And so I really like the idea of, it just boils down to, I like the idea of pulling emotions. I keep saying it, but that's the main goal with writing, I feel like, is to just be able to get someone to feel something, whether or not it's good, whether or not it's bad. Just getting someone to bring out emotions that they maybe knew they had, maybe they didn't. That's the goal, just.
But there's also like cheap ways of doing it, of pulling emotion.
Yeah.
You can just
kill a dog.
Yeah. Right, exactly. It's like make someone like enraged. It's like, just kill a dog on screen. But like there's also just, since we're talking horror, and I don't watch that much horror myself, but the simple jump scare.
Yes.
Whether or not if it's a real jump scare or not, you can have just like everything gets quiet and like the music gets really dramatic and then something builds up and then camera comes around the corner and
yeah.
It's just like
another character.
Yeah, you just like close the fridge or something. Like
I feel like there are definitely cheap ways to go about something like that, and I hate it when it happens because there are so many movies that have so much potential, but they rely on the cheap stuff, the cliches.
Yeah.
And I'm a fan of cliches, I think cliches can be good if used correctly.
Right.
Cabin in the Woods was a really good example of that. I'm not sure if you've even seen that.
No, I mean, I don't. Again, I don't really watch horror.
Yeah.
But like,
that was a great example of using cliches to your advantage. And, I'm a fan of the old stuff, Friday the 13th and
sure.
the original Halloween, and that created the cliches. Yeah. So that's why I like them. I mean, this past week, I've set up an account on Amazon just so that I could watch every Friday the 13th movie in order, and I just finished all, 11 of them.
What was the best one?
Obviously the first.
Oh.
the first is the best, and then they get to New York, and you're like, okay.
And then Jason X or something.
Yeah, I did watch that one.
So then, what are other examples of a cheap trick or a cheap cliche, and then examples of how other films or other mediums have used it effectively?
Okay, I'll just use the Cabin in the Woods as an example because that's my favorite example of using cliches. It's about these 4 or 5 kids, well, they're teenagers, but they go into the woods to stay at a cabin in the woods. And, you start getting all the cliches, they go down into the basement and they find all these objects, but there's a million objects. They're all different, and they each have a different story. And you can see them counting down to something's going to curse them or whatever. And then they choose this, I think it's a journal that they find, which was written by some Southern belle in the 1800s. And then all of a sudden that kind of ghost shows up. And they had to choose who was coming by going into the basement. And then people start getting affected by the macho male man is the jock is, he's like, we need to stay together. And then he walks through a hallway and this mist comes through and he's like, you know what? I think we need to split up. I'll go with her. And then you find out, to spoil it a little bit, that
statute of limitations is over.
There are people in underground controlling the entire thing. And they have all the cliches there. So they have, people coming out of the lake, and they have people causing jump scares, and people, and eventually, they go down into the whole system, and they have all these monsters that they could have chosen with each of the objects, and they kind of flip it. And then by the end, it just gets insane. Sigourney Weaver comes in, and it's the gods are angry. But it was a really interesting way of flipping the script, and I really respected that.
And then there's also long-form mediums in TV that obviously you get to tell a story in a much longer form because now you can expect people to binge watch on Netflix, and just
which is easier to do now. I feel like 20 years ago when Sopranos was airing in the 90s, people couldn't binge watch that.
Yeah,
but now it's so much easier. I would agree that it's easier to create something that you can stretch. And I feel like that's a good thing, because if you can stretch something, you can fit so much more into it. And you can pull it on to seasons and seasons, even if it's just a limited one season. I've started watching Black Mirror. I don't know.
I love Black Mirror.
It's so good. I've started watching that. It's incredible. And everything is different, but they still are able to keep coming up with ideas. And I think that's a benefit of doing a series or a season, is that you can just add on as you go. You get an idea, you put it into the machine, and you create another piece of work. Or
but that length can also be a double-edged sword. It can create opportunities for just squeezing the life out of characters and stories. So I mean, like Big Bang Theory and like
Supernatural.
I never watched Supernatural, but or then even like Adventure Time.
Yeah.
Has gone on longer than it needs to at this point.
Like,
And now the charm is gone.
Even SpongeBob, like
Right.
at this point in time,
Yeah.
has started to like wear thin.
Yeah, and then for me personally, I really enjoyed The Walking Dead. And then it just got to a point to where I'm just like, it seems like every episode is just clickbait now.
That's I feel like that, you know. I watched like the first 3 seasons or something, and then the governor came in, and I was like, this is boring, and I stopped watching. And then he went away, and so I started watching again, and then it got boring, and I stopped watching. And then they had the whole Negan thing, and so I started watching again, and now I've stopped watching.
Right.
You know, I watched like every other season. But I can agree that, you know, it's good to find a niche and to find things that the audience is going to like and will react to, but if you keep jabbing at that wound, you're not going to get it forever. Eventually it's going to run dry.
Right.
And that's the issue that I see with a lot of these shows that people have fallen in love with, is that they're just starting to run out of ideas. You know, but they don't want to end because the people love it, and you know, they've achieved a lot, but I mean, I feel like it's good to know when to stop.
Right.
I feel like it's very important to know when, you know, okay, we had a good run. Let's stop. Like Friends stopped at the 10th season and has not done a reunion. They won't do a movie. They won't bring it back because they're like, it's done. It's dead.
Right.
We finished everything.
Right. And also everyone's like kind of old looking and weird.
Yeah.
And it's like,
it's like, maybe we should not do that.
What's been an example of a TV show that has done a sort of limited run and you appreciate the fact that it has been limited?
Ooh, I know I have some. I have to think deep because I watch way too many shows. I started watching The Sopranos, and with my family, and that was a limited run. It was only about 6 seasons, I think, and Arrested Development. You know, that was limited to. But they're bringing that back now, and so I don't know how to feel about it.
Darn. I've been meaning to watch Arrested Development, but now if they're going to put more episodes, then I might just wait even longer.
Yeah. So, you know, I can appreciate that. I'm trying to think of other shows that have kind of put an end to it. But most of my favorite shows are still running. You know, Sunny in Philadelphia and stuff like that. They're still going, and they're still coming up with good ideas. But for certain shows, I feel like it needs to stop.
I mean, one of my personal, 2 of my personal favorites, Gravity Falls. Just 2 seasons. That's it. You're done. And then Over the Garden Wall. Did you ever watch that?
I have heard of it and possibly seen one episode.
It is real short and really good, and it's also allegorical. So, yeah, I recommend it.
I'll have to look into that one.
Okay. So then, big transition, except for lack of transition. What is the importance, what is the role of spirituality or religion in your life?
I was waiting for that question. The role of spirituality in my life has been a very complicated one for a very long time because it has kind of adjusted as I've grown. And so when I was younger, we went to this Methodist church, and I was like going to Bible daycare, which of course I hated because I was a kid and I wanted to stay home. But and then we kept going to that church, and I realized I just didn't like the way that they were practicing everything. I didn't agree with the system that they were going by. And so I convinced my family to start going to Life Church, which is kind of a more open and generic, like it's kind of a transition church. And we enjoyed that for a while. And then I came to a point where I was like, maybe like I should stop trying. And so I kind of didn't really believe anything for a while. I told everyone I was agnostic, but I wasn't sure. I was still questioning. And then recently I've had a huge transition in my life where I've moved out of my house and I'm living in my own place, and it's kind of my little temple. It's my little sanctuary, and I've found kind of my own little way of having spirituality. You know, I've been collecting like crystals and burning sage and stuff like that. Kind of Wicca practices, but I'm not Wiccan by any means. I think I was looking up what I could possibly be, and I think there's a religion called Eatsism, IETS-ism, and it was fairly close to what I am, but I don't like to label myself either, so I don't want to like search for something to call myself. I just am spiritual, you know. I meditate with crystals, and that changed my life. You know, I started meditating and it's been really great. And then I stopped, and then my life went downhill. So I need to start doing that again.
Right. So obviously crystals and sage, that's really different. But obviously the like outside perspective is like, it's kind of weird.
Yeah,
like,
I get that a lot.
So what is it? Why is that important? How does that work for you?
I stumbled across it a little while ago. You know, I think it kind of started with, I followed this crystal blog who sold these really amazing crystals, and you know, he sells like crystal pipes, and he sells just all these amazing pieces, and I thought they were amazing, and so I started researching, you know, the effects that they can have and how it affects like your chakras and stuff like that. I'm a huge believer in that kind of stuff. And at least at this moment in time, who knows, in 2 years I might be like, wow. But it affects your chakras and stuff like that. And then it kind of led me to just kind of find God, in quotations, in my own way. Because, you know, I mean, if you want to get really into it, I believe there is a higher power. I have no idea what it is. We will never know.
Yeah.
There's like karma, kind of. It's just a force in the universe that, you know, is a good force and will kind of guide us, but you have to put out your good energy, I feel like.
Yeah.
So I always, you know, try to be a positive person.
Right.
I've really been trying not to be like spiteful, which is really hard for me because I love doing that. And so I'll just meditate, and I have this little table with all my crystals on it, and it has these little like prayer beads inside of it, and I'll use those, and it's something that I found that comforts me and gives me something to kind of guide me, but I don't obsess over it.
Right.
You know, it's not something that I'm like, oh, I'm going to get struck by karma if I don't, you know, cleanse my crystals, or, you know, it's nothing like that. It's all very casual.
Right.
And I've always kind of been a fan of casual religion, you know, where you're like, hey, this is cool, this is my thing, but that's about it, you know.
Right.
Because I've known too many people who have been like shoving it down your throat, which I feel like is very very not religious to do something like that. But that's kind of a general statement. So
right. So I mean, because it is different to go from like generally Christian to moving towards like chakras and stuff. And so how do you get from generally Christian to like karma and chakras and stones?
It happened very fast, actually, because I was Methodist as a child, and then for about, I think through my high school years, pretty much, I was just kind of atheist / agnostic. But then it mostly happened when I moved out, was the transition. That was the whole transition for me. because I felt like there was a lot of negativity in my old place, because just so many things had happened there, and I didn't really want to remember it. So getting a new place, you know, I walked in and it just felt like lifted. I felt so much brighter being there, and so that's when I started finding out about this crystal stuff, and I bought a grid, you know, those little crystal grids that you can set up. I have one of those in my room, and I just started kind of doing things my own way, which is kind of what I'm doing right now in every aspect of life, is just kind of doing it my own way, just kind of figuring out life, you know, as a adult. But it was a pretty easy transition, you know, because I've pretty much left everything else in the past. Everything I've, you know, worshipped or anything that I felt towards religion, I've put in the past, and I'm just trying to kind of live in the now, where I'm like, okay, this is how I feel, this is what comforts me, and this is what I believe in, and it was pretty easy, actually. You know, there wasn't much that I could talk about in terms of, you know, the transition, other than it all happened when I moved. You know, I moved, and the new place just had a great energy, and for me, it's all about energy. You know, I feel like everyone has like an aura about themselves that good energy, bad energy, you know, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But when I say that to people, I come off as like a really
Mystical.
weird hippie and
Yeah.
mystical, stuff like that. And some people don't like that, but it helps. So I'm fine with it.
Right. So then moving to my very pointed questions that I make a point to ask. God, question mark?
God. In a sense, I believe that is the name that I use to refer to the kind of force that I feel is the powerful good. I refer to it as God, but in the traditional sense, I would say most likely not.
Right.
Karma, yes. You know, sin, debatable. But, you know, I think everyone has their own definition of God. So, you know, some people just aren't into it, which is fine, you know. Some people are really into it, which is fine, as long as you're not being, like, showboaty about it.
Right.
And then for me, it's just that's just what I picture, you know, but not in any way in a traditional sense. It's more of a God is an energy, and I kind of put my thoughts out more to the universe and the earth more than God, you know. But I include that a little bit, just in case.
Yeah. So by that logic, I'm not trying to use like logic, but like, are we included in that God?
I think a little bit. I think that we all have a little bit of energy in each of us that is returned when we die and when we're born, you know. So I feel like it's all one circuit.
Yeah.
And so in a way, I would say yes.
Yeah.
But
you heard it here. Tyler's God.
No, but I feel like in a sense, it's all one circuit, and you know, I feel like all energy goes to the same place. So that's one of those kind of who knows.
Sure.
You know, well, I'm never gonna know that, but I like to think that we're all a little bit connected to each other and to kind of our environment in a way.
Yeah. And then free will, question mark.
Free will. See, I've heard you ask that before, and I've always wondered what my answer would be. I believe that free will is obviously debatable. I think that there is free will, but I also think that you can be kind of pushed into doing something, you know. If you asked to like be guided, then you will be guided. But if you decide to do something off the road of whatever your destination is, then that's your choice to move.
Yeah.
So probably.
Yeah.
None of my answers are definite.
No, and that's good. It allows you openness and willingness to shift. So I mean, not to inject my own philosophy into here, but like, it's good to be able to adapt.
Yes.
So then, you said sin is debatable, but then there's also like good and bad energy.
Yeah.
So where does the good and bad, I guess, come from, and where does it go?
I have no idea where it comes from. I feel like, you know, that's something I've never put too much thought into before, because I feel like bad energy can be created, but good energy is always there. And, you know, that's kind of how everything has been, but then bad energy can be kind of created. I feel like it's kind of fluid. It, you know, some energy can be, you know, you have a good energy and then you turn it into a bad energy, and then you need help with other people who are good energies to kind of lift it back up. You know, so I think it's fluid, and you can kind of move back and forth with it a little bit.
Okay.
But not a definite.
Right. So then how do you put good energy into the world?
I think you can do a lot of things to put good energy into the world. I think that, I mean, you can go about it spiritually. You can ask for good energy. You can pray for good energy. You can wish good energy on other people, which is what I try to do. But I also feel like you can create it. You know, when I moved into my new place, I burned sage all around the apartment, and I feel like that really lifted some of the old energy and kind of brought in the new. Although I forgot to open the windows, so it got a little smoky. As opposed to, I completely blanked. I'm sorry.
Good energy.
Good energy. How do we create good energy? I feel like you can also go about it in your daily life. I feel like that's something that kind of ties in with karma. I feel, you know, to do good energy, to do good things for people. I feel like the universe recognizes that. Yeah. And sees it and sees that you're trying. It might not always acknowledge it. You know, some people are like, I'm doing good. Why am I not being rewarded? But I feel like it might not always acknowledge it, but it sees it happening, and it kind of karma watches that.
So then what good things could people be doing that they're not right now?
Oh, that's a really broad question. Do you mean people in general? People in their daily lives?
Yeah. Well, nowadays, in
this economy.
In this economy.
I just think supporting one another as of right now, because I think it all depends on what's going on in the world. You know, had it been like 20 years ago, it would be, you know, something completely different. But I feel like now, and that's where a little bit of my like slightly liberal standpoint comes into play. But I feel like we just
getting to it.
I just feel like we need to support each other. I feel like supporting each other, sending love, helping to heal one another, stuff like that is something that will spread good energy, and people will recognize that and kind of carry it along with them. You know, I feel like it's something that like you touch a good energy, you can carry it with you to. I sound like a crazy person, but.
So then, yes, like I said, I'm getting to that, which is right now. Politics, yay. How do you feel about the things, the orange man up top?
The orange man up top. The orange menace. I feel disappointed. I feel very sad that this is where we're at. Mm-hmm. But I'm not in the mindset of this is the end of days, which a lot of people are, it seems. You know, I feel like it's very sad. It's very unfortunate. Really bad things are happening, but I feel like it will pass eventually, somehow. Mm-hmm. Whether or not we all die, that's debatable. But I feel like we could be doing a lot more to... And I'm not sure what we could be doing. You know, that's not up to me to decide. But I feel like we could be doing more to, and people are starting to. You know, people are starting to recognize what's wrong, and people are starting to, you know, march and to unite a little bit more, which I like to see. I like to see unity. It gives you a sense of like kind of pride to see people coming together like that. Yeah. Especially like your kind of people, you know, whoever you belong to, as a person in America.
What ways can we unite more, especially with those that we have such a hard time agreeing with?
That is, like I said, I'm not sure that I have the answer to that. You know, that's something that I feel like is going to take a lot of people to work out. But I feel like patience, just being patient. There's such, I feel like, especially, I mean, you see it online more often because you don't interact with people who are like on the opposite side that much, I feel like, in your daily life. But, you know, you see such an eagerness to prove somebody wrong. And to say, oh, no, this is the way it is. Right. And I feel like if we were more patient then and just listened, we just need to listen, I feel like that would go so far. But so many people won't listen. So many people won't be patient and are just stuck in mindsets. And, you know, I'm not saying that what I believe is 100% correct. I could definitely be wrong, you know. But, and I just feel like that the people, if they would come together, would somehow be able to create a sense of what is right. But that will probably never happen in the near future, unless something very bad happens, which I'm hoping will not happen. Right. I just wish people would listen and be patient and try a little more to understand. And I know that's what everyone says. Everyone's like, you need to listen, you need to be patient. But, like, that's, like, on a real note. Like, please just, like, shut up and listen. Just for, like, 2 minutes, and then we'll be fine. Yeah. But people are just so eager to argue. People are so easy to offend and get them to start screaming obscenities and slurs and stuff like that.
On whatever side.
Yeah. Either way. It works both ways.
And then, lastly, what advice do you have for people?
In general?
Yeah.
My advice for people in general would be don't take life seriously. I feel like I try to say this as much as possible. Don't take life too seriously because I feel like people get so caught up in the idea that if they aren't successful in life in terms of like business and love and sex and relationships and stuff like that, I feel like people get so caught up in that they forget that there's a whole world out there. And, you know, at the end of the day, if you're on your deathbed, you're not going to be like, oh, I wish I had taken out that bond. You're going to be like, oh, I wish I spent more time with my family. I wish that I was able to, you know, go visit places in the world and meet people and make connections, because I feel like that's what matters in the end is the connections we make and the energy we share. And I just wish people would realize that in the long run, that's the most important thing, and to not get so swallowed by what society wants you to do.
Right. Yeah.
That's what I'd say.
Awesome. No, that was great. It's been great catching up and seeing you again. And always thank you for listening, but now thank you for doing this with me.
Of course.
Where can we find you and your things?
You can find me on most of my social media at Tyganza, which is Tyganza.
Mhm.
I'm on Instagram, Snapchat, Tumblr, but don't go to my Tumblr, maybe. And of course, social media, Facebook, stuff like that. Anyone who knows you will be able to find me.
Well, plus I'll have like links and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is it that are you like working on anything that you want to like put out or show people or
Not
whatever?
currently.
Okay.
Maybe next time.
Okay. Yeah. Again, thank you. My name is Santiago Ramones.
I'm Tyler Johnston.
You can find everything that I do on my website, santiagoramones.com. I make music. You will find this podcast there as well, which you can leave reviews and comment on stuff. Let me know what you think. Let me know some of your favorite guests, or just maybe some people that would be cool to have on here. And then you can download my music for free or for not free. That is up to you. You can listen to it and download it onto your phone, because downloading is still a thing. I don't have streaming yet. And then I will be playing more gigs this year, and hopefully I will continue to update that soon enough. I think probably by the time that this podcast goes up, I will have already played a gig on February 16th. I'm not sure about the timing on this. But yeah, so I play live music. I'll try to let people know. I was on my podcast with my 3 things. They shape my life philosophy. Those 3 things are: love never fails, it's going to be okay, I might be wrong.